We're told that destiny is written in our blood, that alphas rule, betas serve, and omegas exist only to bear children and kneel before their betters. We're told that the mating bond is sacred, that when an alpha finds their true mate, nothing else matters. We're told these things like they're laws of nature, immutable as gravity. But when you're an omega born without a scent, when your body refuses to bloom into heat, when even your own designation rejects you, you learn the devastating truth. Destiny is just another word for cruelty. The bond is just another chain. And love? Love is the most vicious lie of all. My name is Mira Thornwell, and I should have been invisible. In a world where omegas are prized like precious gems, where their heats can bring alphas to their knees, and their fertility ensures the survival of bloodlines, I was the mistake, the defect. An omega without a scent is like a flower without fragrance, a song without sound technically present, but fundamentally wrong. I was supposed to fade into the background of the royal palace, to scrub floors and change linens and never, ever be seen by the Alpha King himself. That was the mercy my station allowed, invisibility, as survival. But fate, or whatever cruel architect designs our lives, had different plans. Tonight, 200 noble damsels will descend upon the palace in silk and diamonds, each one perfect, scented, desperate to become queen. Tonight, the Alpha King will choose his mate from among the finest omegas in 5 kingdoms. And tonight, I will learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is be exactly what someone has been searching for their entire life. This is not a story about a maid who became a queen. This is a story about a king who became human. You know, before we dive into Mira's full journey, I want to share something with you. I've written a book called Rejected by the Alpha, and if this opening resonated with you, if you felt Mira's pain of being overlooked and undervalued, you're going to love it. It's a glow-up revenge romance about claiming the power everyone said you'd never have. Links in the description. But right now, let's get back to Mira's story, because it's about to get intense. Chapter 1. The Disposable Daughter. The morning they announced the king's mating ball, my mother cried for 3 hours straight. Not for me, of course. For Lydia. My sister stood in the center of our small sitting room like a lighthouse in a storm, golden hair cascading down her back, her omega scent wild roses and summer honey filling every corner of our modest home. At 20, she was everything the kingdom valued. Beautiful, fertile, properly presented. Her heats came like clockwork every 3 months. Strong enough that father had to install specialized locks on her door to keep the neighborhood alphas from breaking down our walls. The king, mother breathed, clutching Lydia's hands like they were made of porcelain. My darling, this is your destiny. I always knew it. From the moment you first bloomed, I knew you were meant for greatness. I stood in the doorway with a basket of laundry pressed against my hip, watching my family celebrate a future that didn't include me. This was familiar territory. I'd learned years ago to make myself small during these moments, to become part of the wallpaper. Mira. Father's voice cut through the excitement like a blade. Don't just stand there. Your sister needs her blue dress pressed. The one with the silver embroidery. Yes, father. I ducked my head and turned toward the washing room. And Mira. He waited until I looked back, his eyes the same gray as mine. The only feature we shared were cold. You'll attend the ball as well. As a servant, naturally. The palace has requested additional staff for the evening. My stomach dropped. Father, it's already arranged. He dismissed me with a wave. You should be grateful. At least this way you'll be useful. The words landed exactly where he intended them. Useful, not valued, not loved. Useful. I fled to the washing room before anyone could see my face crack. The truth was, I'd stopped crying over my father's cruelty years ago. When I was 13, and my heat never came. When I was 14 and the physician confirmed what everyone suspected. My omega designation was incomplete. Broken. When I was 15, and father sold our house to pay for treatments that did nothing but make me sick. When I was 16, and he stopped looking at me altogether. Omegas without scent, without heat, without fertility, we were ghosts. We existed in the space between classifications, too omega to be beta, too defective to be omega. The kingdom had no place for us, no name for us. We were simply Wrong. I pressed Lydia's dress with mechanical precision, watching the silver threads catch the light. It was beautiful. She would be beautiful in it. And tomorrow, or the next day, or whenever the king made his choice, she would move into the palace, and I would never see her again. The thought should have made me sad. Instead, I felt nothing but a dull, familiar ache. Mira? Lydia's voice was soft behind me. Can I come in? I didn't turn around. Your dress isn't ready yet. I don't care about the dress. She moved closer, and I caught the edge of her scent sweeter now, anxious. I wanted to talk to you. About tonight. There's nothing to talk about. You'll be presented, the king will see you, and you'll charm him like you charm everyone. I folded the dress carefully, still not meeting her eyes. It's what you were made for. That's not fair, isn't it? I finally looked at her. You're perfect, Lydia. You always have been. This is just the next obvious step. My sister's face crumpled, and for a moment, she looked young, frightened. I don't want to mate with a stranger. I don't want to leave home. I don't want. She stopped, swallowing hard. What if he's cruel? What if the bond doesn't take? What if I fail? Something twisted in my chest. Despite everything, despite being the loved daughter, the valued daughter, the one with a future, Lydia was still afraid. Because in our world, even perfect Omegas were just beautiful cages waiting to be locked. I set down the iron and pulled her into an embrace. She smelled like our childhood, like the garden behind our old house, like every moment before my body betrayed me and divided us into worthy and worthless. You won't fail, I whispered into her hair. You're too good to fail. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. Come with me tonight, not as a servant, as my sister, please. I almost laughed. Lydia, I can't. I'll talk to father. I'll make him understand. I don't want to do this alone. But we both knew that was impossible. The ball was for noble Omegas, for the elite, for those who could stand before the Alpha King and prove their worth through scent alone. Letting a broken Omega like me anywhere near the presentation would be an insult to the crown. I'll be there, I said finally. In the servants' corridors, that's close enough. It had to be. That evening, I dressed in the plain gray uniform all palace servants wore, shapeless, designed to make us invisible. I braided my dark hair into a tight crown and scrubbed my face clean of anything that might draw attention. The palace had sent specific instructions. Servants were to be silent, efficient, and above all, unnoticed. I was very good at being unnoticed. The palace was chaos when I arrived. Hundreds of servants rushed through marble corridors, carrying flowers and wine and elaborate decorations. The mating ball was the event of the century. The Alpha King had ruled alone for 7 years since his father's death. And the kingdom was desperate for an heir. You, new girl. A sharp-faced beta woman grabbed my arm. 3rd floor, Eastern Wing. The Omegas are arriving and they need help with their presentations. My heart sank. Isn't there something else I could move? So I moved. The Eastern Wing was pandemonium. 200 noble Omegas, each more beautiful than the last, filled the preparation chambers like exotic birds. Their scents mingled into something overwhelming: jasmine and vanilla, cinnamon and rain, dark chocolate and fresh bread. It was intoxicating, suffocating. I kept my head down and did what I was told. Fastening dress clasps, adjusting jewelry, fetching glasses of water for Omegas, too nervous to keep their hands steady. And then I saw Lydia. She stood in front of a full-length mirror, and she was devastating. The blue dress hugged her curves perfectly, the silver embroidery catching the candlelight. Her hair was arranged in an intricate updo, with small diamonds woven throughout. Her scent rolled off her in waves. Mira! She spotted me and rushed over, grabbing my hands. Tell me I don't look ridiculous. You look like a queen, I said honestly. Her smile was brilliant and terrified. I can't believe this is happening. In an hour, I'll meet him. The Alpha King. Mira. What if? A gong sounded, deep and resonant. Every Omega in the room froze. It's time, someone whispered, and like a river of silk and perfume, they began to move toward the ballroom. Subscribe if you believe broken Omegas like Mira deserve more than invisibility. Because people like her need an audience that won't abandon them. I followed at a distance, keeping to the servants' corridors that ran parallel to the main halls. Through narrow windows, I could see glimpses of the procession. Hundreds of perfect Omegas, moving toward their destiny. The ballroom was a cathedral of gold and crystal. I entered through a side door reserved for staff, pressing myself against the wall where shadows pooled thickest. From here, I could see everything without being seen. The Omegas arranged themselves in a semicircle, a garden of beauty and desperation. And at the far end of the room, on a throne of black marble, sat the Alpha King. I'd never seen him before. Few people had. He rarely appeared in public, and when he did, it was always brief, always formal. But tonight, he was impossible to ignore. Caden Aldrich was not handsome in any conventional sense. His face was too sharp, too severe, all harsh angles and cold intelligence. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his eyes, even from this distance, were the color of winter storms. His scent rolled through the room like thunder before rain. Cedar and steel, smoke and something wild I couldn't name. He looked bored. No worse than bored. He looked like a man attending his own funeral. The presentations began. One by one, Omegas stepped forward, curtsied, allowed their scents to bloom. Each one was rejected with a slight shake of his head. No words. No explanation. Just, no. Lydia was near the end of the line. I watched her hands tremble as she waited, watched her force herself to breathe steadily. When her turn came, she stepped forward with her chin high, every inch the perfect Omega. She curtsied. Her scent flooded the room. Roses and honey, sweet and strong. The king stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. My sister stumbled back into line, her face pale with humiliation. One by one, he rejected them all. 200 perfect Omegas, and he wanted none of them. The room was silent, except for the sound of suppressed sobs. And then the king stood. This was a mistake, he said, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. I apologize for wasting your time. He turned to leave, and stopped. His head snapped up, nostrils flaring. Every muscle in his body went rigid. He was scenting something. No, he breathed. And then, impossibly, his eyes locked directly on me. On me, hidden in the shadows. On me, the broken Omega without a scent. On me, the girl who wasn't supposed to exist. You, the Alpha King said, his voice rough with something I couldn't name. Come here. Chapter 2. The Transaction. The ballroom dissolved into chaos. 200 noble Omegas turned as one, their eyes scanning the crowd for whoever had captured the king's attention. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Servants pressed themselves flatter against walls, terrified of being mistaken for the object of the Alpha King's sudden interest. But his eyes never left mine. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My feet were rooted to the marble floor as if the stone had grown up around my ankles. This had to be a mistake. He couldn't be looking at me. There was nothing about me to look at. I said, "Come here." His voice was darker now, edged with command, the alpha tone that made every Omega in the room flinch with instinctive submission. Every Omega except me, because whatever broken thing lived inside me didn't respond to alpha commands the way it should. I felt the pull, yes, but it was distant, muted, like hearing music through water. "Your Majesty." A beta advisor appeared at his elbow, voice low and urgent. "Perhaps we should leave." The king didn't look away from me. "Everyone, out." "But Your Majesty." "Out." The single word cracked through the air like a whip. The ballroom emptied in seconds, nobles tripping over their gowns in their haste to escape, servants scattering like startled birds. I saw Lydia's face in the crowd, white with confusion and fear, before she was swept away with the others. And then, there was silence. Just me. And the Alpha King. And the vast, glittering emptiness between us. He moved first, descending from his throne with a predator's grace. Each step echoed in the cavernous space. He crossed the ballroom floor slowly, deliberately, his storm gray eyes never leaving mine. I should have run. Every instinct I had screamed at me to flee. But I stayed frozen, watching him approach like watching an avalanche. Terrible and inevitable and impossible to escape. He stopped 3 feet away. Up close, he was even more unsettling. Tall enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. Broad-shouldered beneath his formal black jacket. And his scent, gods, his scent was overwhelming this close. Cedar and steel and something wild that made my pulse race in a way I didn't understand. "What's your name?" His voice was quieter now, but no less intense. "Mira." It came out as a whisper. "Mira Thornwell. Mira." He said it like he was tasting the word. "Why are you here?" I'm a servant, Your Majesty. I was assigned to help with the presentations." His eyes narrowed. "You're an Omega." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "Yes." "Then why?" He stopped, his nostrils flaring again as he scented the air around me. Confusion flickered across his face. Then something darker. Realization. "You have no scent." Shame burned through me, hot and familiar. "No, Your Majesty." "No heat?" "No." "Infertile?" The word was a blade between my ribs. "Yes." I waited for the disgust, the dismissal, the inevitable rejection. It was what always came after the truth. But instead, the king did something that shocked me more than his initial attention. He smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was sharp and bitter and filled with a dark humor I didn't understand. "Perfect," he murmured. "Absolutely perfect. I don't understand." "Of course you don't." He stepped back, his expression shifting into something more controlled, more royal. "Mira Thornwell, I have a proposition for you." My stomach dropped. "Your Majesty, if this is it's not about mating, or breeding, or any of the things you're imagining." He clasped his hands behind his back, every inch the monarch now. "I need you to do something for me. Something that requires an Omega who won't be affected by certain biological imperatives. I don't understand." "You will." He gestured toward the throne. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. I followed him through a side door I hadn't noticed before, down a corridor lined with portraits of previous kings. Each one looked stern and powerful and utterly certain of their place in the world. The current king looked like he wanted to set the paintings on fire. "Do you know why I held this ball?" he asked, without looking at me. "To find a mate, Your Majesty." "Wrong. I held it because the Council of Lords gave me an ultimatum. Choose a mate within the month, or they would choose one for me." His voice was flat, emotionless. "They're terrified I'll die without an heir, and plunge the kingdom into civil war. As if my death would be the worst thing that could happen to this cursed bloodline." We turned down another corridor, this one darker, older. The air grew colder. For 7 years, I've avoided this. For 7 years, I've searched for a way out. And tonight, I found it. He finally looked at me, and there was something desperate in his eyes. "You, me? An Omega without a scent, without heat, without the biological drives that would complicate everything." He stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. "You're exactly what I need." "For what?" Instead of answering, he opened the door. The room beyond was nothing like the rest of the palace. Where everything else was marble and gold and crystal, this was stone and shadows. A circular chamber with walls covered in strange symbols I didn't recognize. In the center stood a simple bed, a desk, and several locked chests. "This," the king said, "is where I spend my nights." I stepped inside cautiously. The air felt different here, heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. "I don't understand why you're showing me this." "Because I'm going to ask you to spend your nights here too." He closed the door behind us, and the symbols on the walls began to glow with a faint blue light. "Not as my mate. As my accomplice, Your Majesty. Call me Caden. If we're going to do this, you should at least use my name." He moved to the desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a thick stack of papers. "I'm cursed, Mira. Have been since my 18th birthday. Every night, from sunset to sunrise, I transform into something else. The breath left my lungs. The beast. His head snapped up. You've heard the rumors? Everyone had heard the rumors. Whispers about the king who locked himself away at night. About servants who disappeared. About something monstrous that prowled the palace after dark. But they were just stories, weren't they? I thought they were myths, I whispered. They're not. He set the papers on the desk with careful precision. Every night, I become something that's not quite human, not quite animal, something in between, and every morning, I wake up as myself, with only fragments of memory from the night before. How is that possible? My father. The words were bitter. He made a deal with something he shouldn't have. Sold his firstborn son for power. I've been paying the price ever since. He turned to face me fully. The curse can only be broken one way. I have to find someone who loves the beast, not the king. Someone who chooses the monster freely, without knowing they're the same person. Understanding crashed over me like a wave. That's why you rejected all those Omegas. They were drawn to my title, my crown, my alpha designation. None of them would have looked twice at the beast. His expression was carefully neutral. But you're different. Because I'm broken. Because you're immune. He moved closer. An Omega with heat would be dangerous to lock in a room with a beast. The instincts would be overwhelming on both sides. But you don't trigger those responses. You're safe. Safe. The word settled over me like a shroud. My entire life, I'd been told my brokenness made me worthless. And now the Alpha King was saying it made me valuable. What exactly are you asking me to do? Spend your nights here. Talk to the beast. Get to know him. Caden's voice was steady, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. If you can find a way to care for that version of me, to see past the monster, the curse breaks. I become fully human again. The council gets their proof that I've chosen someone. And you, I get what? Whatever you want. He gestured around the room. Money, property, freedom, a life far away from whatever brought you to servitude. Name your price. It was a transaction, not a rescue, not a fairy tale. Just a business arrangement between two people who needed something from each other. And if I can't? I asked quietly. If I can't find a way to care for a monster? His smile was sad. Then at least I'll have tried something other than parading perfect Omegas in front of me like prized cattle. I should have said no. Should have run back to my small, invisible life and pretended this conversation never happened. But something in his eyes stopped me. A loneliness that matched my own. A desperation I recognized. How long do I have to decide? The transformation happens at sunset. That gives you about 3 hours. He pulled out a pocket watch, checking it with the air of a man counting down to his own execution. If you agree, you'll be brought here before dark. If not, he shrugged. I'll find another way to deal with the council. What happens to the other Omegas? The ones you rejected? They'll be compensated for their time and sent home with generous gifts, their reputations intact. He met my eyes. Your sister Lydia, correct? She'll be fine. I'll make sure of it. The fact that he'd noticed Lydia, that he'd remembered her name in a sea of 200 faces, told me more about him than anything else. He paid attention. He cared, even when he pretended not to. I need to think about it, I said finally. Of course. He opened the door, and the symbols on the walls faded back to darkness. You have until sunset. Someone will come find you with my answer. I started to leave, then paused. Your Majesty, Caden, why me? Really? You could have found any Omega without scent. Why choose me specifically? For a moment, he looked almost vulnerable. Because when you looked at me in that ballroom, you weren't afraid, you weren't awed, you just looked tired. Like you understood what it means to be trapped in a body that doesn't work the way it should. He smiled without humor. I thought maybe that made us kindred spirits. I found Lydia in our family's guest quarters, still in her blue dress, crying into her hands. Mira, she launched herself at me. What happened? Why did the king look at you like that? Everyone's saying terrible things that you used witchcraft, that you seduced him somehow, that, Lydia, stop. I gently extracted myself from her embrace. I need to tell you something, and you need to promise not to repeat it to anyone. Not mother, not father, no one. Her eyes went wide, but she nodded. So I told her. Not everything, not about the curse or the beast, but enough. That the king had a proposition. That it was a business arrangement. That it might be my only chance at a different life. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. You're going to say yes, she said finally. It wasn't a question. I don't know. Yes, you do. She took my hands. Mira, you've been invisible your whole life. Father treats you like a mistake. Mother pretends you don't exist half the time. And her voice cracked. I've let them. I've been too afraid to stand up for you because I didn't want to lose their love too. Lydia, this is your chance. Whatever he's offering you, take it. She squeezed my hands hard. Promise me you'll take it. I wanted to argue, to tell her it wasn't that simple. But the truth was, she was right. What did I have to lose? A life of invisibility? A family that only valued me for the work I could do? I promise, I whispered. The sun was setting when a beta servant found me. Miss Thornwell? The king requests your presence. I followed him through the winding corridors, my heart hammering against my ribs. We stopped outside the circular chamber, and the servant produced a key. He's asked me to inform you that once you enter, the door will be locked until sunrise, for your protection and his. The servant's face was carefully blank. If you wish to decline, you may do so now with no consequences. I thought about my father's cold eyes, my mother's tears for Lydia and silence for me, the physician who'd told me at 14 that I would never be a real Omega. I thought about the king's tired smile, his bitter laugh, the way he'd called us kindred spirits. Open the door, I said. The servant unlocked it, and I stepped inside. The room was exactly as I remembered: stone walls, simple furniture, those strange glowing symbols. But now there was a small table with food and water, a nightgown laid out on the bed, books stacked on the desk, and sitting in a chair by the far wall, already beginning to change as the last light faded from the windows, was Caden. His hands were curled into claws, fur beginning to sprout along his arms. His face was elongating, becoming something between human and wolf. His eyes, those storm-gray eyes, were wild with pain. You came, he growled, his voice already distorting. Stupid girl. I made a deal, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Deals can be broken. His body convulsed, bones cracking and reforming. Run. While you still can. But I didn't run. I closed the door behind me and heard the lock click into place. And as the transformation completed, as the king became the beast, I whispered into the growing darkness, "Tell me your name." The beast's eyes glowed in the shadows, and for the first time in 7 years, someone had stayed. Chapter 3. The Riddle. The beast was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Where Caden had been tall, the beast was massive, easily 7 feet of corded muscle and silver-black fur. His hands were tipped with claws that could shred stone. His face was lupine but disturbingly human, with those same storm-gray eyes now glowing with an inner light. When he breathed, I could see fangs designed to rend flesh from bone. He stood in the corner of the room, perfectly still, watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "You asked my name," he said finally. His voice was deeper than Caden's, rougher, but the cadence was similar. "Why?" "Because if we're going to spend the night together, I should know what to call you." I stayed by the door, giving him space. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to show fear, to submit, to make myself small, but something told me that would be the wrong move. The beast tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. "You're not afraid." "I didn't say that. Your scent would betray you. If you had one." He took a step closer, and I forced myself not to flinch. "But you don't smell like anything. No fear, no arousal, no omega sweetness to drive me mad. You're just empty." The word stung, even though I'd heard variations of it my whole life. Empty. Broken. Wrong. "I'm still a person," I said quietly. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or respect. Yes, you are. He moved to the chair and sat, a clear attempt to make himself less threatening. It didn't really work when he was still massive and covered in fur and claws, but I appreciated the effort. The king didn't tell me your name, I said, taking a cautious step forward. The beast's name. Are you the same person? That's the question, isn't it? He laughed, bitter and dark. I have his memories, his thoughts, but I'm more or less, depending on how you look at it. He flexed his clawed hands. He's all control and duty and carefully managed emotion. I'm everything he locks away during the day. The rage, the loneliness, the desperate howling need to be seen as something other than a crown. I moved to the table and sat, putting furniture between us. Not out of fear, though, there was plenty of that, but to establish a boundary. So you are him, just unfiltered. Something like that. He watched me sit, his eyes tracking every movement. You're very calm for someone locked in a room with a monster. Should I be screaming? Would that help? No. But most people would anyway. I poured myself water from the pitcher, mainly to give my shaking hands something to do. I'm not most people. I think we've established that. Because you're broken. It wasn't cruel the way he said it. Just factual. Because I'm practical. I took a sip, meeting his eyes over the rim of the cup. You need something from me. I need something from you. Screaming doesn't serve either of our interests. The beast leaned back in his chair, and I heard it creak under his weight. The king told you about the curse. About what he needs. Someone to love the beast without knowing he's the king. Yes. And you think you can do that? Look at me, Mira. Really look. He spread his arms wide, displaying his full monstrous form. I'm not some handsome prince playing at being cursed. This is real. I have killed people in this form. Torn them apart when they threatened the king during the day. I am dangerous. I know. Then why are you here? It was a fair question. One I'd been asking myself since I agreed to this insanity. Because the king looked at me like I was a person, not a mistake, I said finally. Because for the first time in my life, someone saw my brokenness and called it useful instead of shameful. Because I have nothing to lose and maybe, just maybe, something to gain. The beast was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're honest. I didn't expect that. What did you expect? Fear, manipulation, false sweetness hiding calculation. He rose from the chair and began to pace, a restless predator in a cage. The nobles who know about the curse think they can fake their way through it, pretend to care for the beast while really wanting the king. But you can't fake love. It shows in 1,000 tiny ways. And you think I'm different because I'm not pretending to care at all. He stopped, looking at me sharply. Are you saying you don't care? I'm saying I'm honest about not knowing you yet. I set down the cup. You want someone to love the beast. Fine. But love isn't instant. It's built. And building requires time and truth. So let's start there. The beast stared at me for a long moment, then laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised and genuine. Gods. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most foolish. Can't I be both? Apparently. He moved to his own chair and sat again, this time more relaxed. All right, Mira Thornwell, let's build something. Ask me anything. I considered this. There were 1,000 questions I could ask about the curse, about his past, about what happened during his nights as the beast. But something else occurred to me first. Tell me something you've never told anyone. Something true. His eyes widened slightly. That's your first question? Yes, he was quiet, thinking. Then, I don't want to be king. I never did. My father groomed me for it, molded me into the perfect heir. Cold, strategic, unfeeling. And when he cursed me, when he traded my humanity for his own power, part of me was almost relieved. Because this, he gestured to his monstrous form, this is the perfect excuse to never have to be what he wanted. The words hung in the air between us, raw and painful. That's why you avoided choosing a mate, I said softly. Not just because of the curse, because choosing means accepting the crown fully. Yes. He looked away. Your turn. Tell me something true. Fair was fair. I don't miss my family. Everyone thinks I should be desperate to see them, to maintain those connections. But the truth is, I'm relieved to be away from them. They made me feel like a ghost in my own life. At least here, locked in a room with a monster, I feel real. The beast's expression softened. Kindred spirits, that's what he called us. Are we? I think we might be. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, a surprisingly human gesture in such an inhuman body. What did he offer you? For doing this? Whatever I want. Money, property, freedom. And what do you want? I'd been asking myself that question since I left Caden in this room hours ago. What did I want? I'd spent so long just surviving, just trying to be invisible enough to avoid pain, that I'd never let myself want anything. I want to matter, I said finally. I want to be more than the broken Omega nobody knows what to do with. I trailed off, surprised by the emotion suddenly choking my throat. You want to be seen, the beast said quietly. Really seen, not as a mistake or a servant or a disappointment, just as yourself. Yes, then I see you, Mira. He held my gaze, and there was something fierce in his expression. I see someone brave enough to lock herself in a room with a monster, someone honest enough to admit she doesn't love me yet, someone smart enough to know that love without truth is worthless. He paused. I see you. Something cracked open in my chest, something I'd kept carefully locked away for years. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them back. Thank you, I whispered. We sat in silence for a while after that. Not an uncomfortable silence, but something almost peaceful. The beast continued to watch me, but it felt less like being hunted, and more like being noticed. Valued. Finally, I spoke again. Can I ask you something else? Anything. The king said you only have fragments of memory from your nights as the beast. Will you remember this conversation? His expression darkened. Some of it. Pieces. It's like trying to remember a dream. The emotions stay clearer than the details. I'll wake up knowing I didn't hurt you. Knowing we talked, but the specifics. He shook his head. They fade. That must be terrifying, not knowing what you've done. It is, especially in the beginning, when I'd wake up with blood on my hands and no memory of whose it was or why. He flexed his claws. Now I have protocols, locks, guards who know to stay away. But the not knowing never stops being frightening. An idea struck me. What if I wrote it down? What we talk about each night. A record you could read in the morning. The beast went very still. You'd do that? Why not? If the goal is for you to remember, to build something real, then you need the memories, even second-hand ones. No one's ever. He stopped, swallowed hard. That would help, more than you know. I looked around and spotted the stack of papers on the desk. May I? He nodded, and I retrieved them along with a pen. Settling back at the table, I began to write. Night 1. Mira Thornwell's account. The beast is not what I expected. He's dangerous, yes, but also lonely, intelligent, honest in ways the king probably can't afford to be. We talked about why we're both here, him trapped by a curse, me trapped by biology. He told me he never wanted to be king. I told him I don't miss my family. He sees me. Really sees me. That matters more than I expected it to. I looked up to find the beast watching me write, something like wonder in his eyes. What? I asked. Nothing. It's just, you're really doing this. You're really staying. I made a deal. Deals can be broken, he said, echoing Caden's words from earlier. You could have run, could have refused once you saw what I was, but you didn't. No, I agreed. I didn't. Why? I set down the pen and considered the question. Why was I still here? It wasn't just the promise of reward. Wasn't just having nowhere else to go. There was something else, something I couldn't quite name yet. Ask me again in a week, I said finally. Maybe I'll know by then. The beast smiled, a strange expression on his lupine face, but genuine. I'll hold you to that. Drop a comment if you've ever felt invisible in your own life. Because Mira's courage to stay might just be the reminder you needed. We talked through the night. Or rather, we took turns asking questions and telling truths. I learned that the beast loved storms, that he could read 7 languages, that his favorite memory from before the curse was flying a kite with his mother in the palace gardens. He learned that I had taught myself to read by stealing books from my sister's tutors, that I was terrified of deep water, that I'd once hidden a stray cat in my room for 3 months before my father found it. Small truths, building blocks. Somewhere around midnight, I began to yawn. The beast noticed immediately. "You should sleep," he said, gesturing to the bed. "I don't need rest, not in this form. What will you do all night?" "Watch over you, make sure you're safe." He moved to the far corner of the room, settling into the shadows. "I promise I won't disturb you." I should have been frightened sleeping in the same room as a literal monster. But something about his tone, his careful distance, made me feel oddly secure. He would keep me safe, even from himself. I changed into the nightgown that had been left for me and slipped under the covers. The bed was surprisingly comfortable, the blankets soft and warm. "Mira?" The beast's voice came from the darkness. "Yes? Thank you. For staying. For seeing me. You're welcome." I closed my eyes, exhausted from the strangest day of my life. Just before sleep claimed me, I heard him whisper something so soft I almost missed it. "Please don't disappear." I woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of harsh breathing. Caden was kneeling by the door, fully human again, his head in his hands. He was shaking. "Your Majesty?" I sat up quickly, alarmed. "Are you all right?" He looked up, and his eyes were red-rimmed. "Raw. You stayed. All night." "I didn't. I wasn't sure you would really do it. I gave my word." People break their word all the time, especially when faced with he, gestured vaguely at himself. "Did he hurt you?" "No. We talked. He was." I searched for the right word. "Lonely, but kind." Caden stared at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't understand. "Kind?" "Yes. No one's ever called the beast kind before." I slipped out of bed and retrieved the papers I'd written on. "Here." I wrote down what we discussed. "So you'd remember." His hands shook as he took the pages. He read in silence, his expression shifting from shock to something softer, more vulnerable. "He told you about not wanting to be king," he murmured. "Yes. I've never told anyone that. Not even him." He looked up at me. "How did you get him to trust you?" I was honest. I didn't pretend to love him, or fear him more than I did. I just talked to him like a person. Caden laughed, a broken, disbelieving sound. "It's that simple?" I don't know if anything about this is simple, but honesty seemed like a good place to start. He stood slowly, still clutching the papers. "You'll come back tonight?" It wasn't really a question, but I nodded anyway. "If you want me to." "I do." He moved to the desk and carefully placed the pages in a drawer. "There will be questions. About where you are. What you're doing. The court will gossip regardless of what we tell them," I finished. "Let them talk. We know the truth." "And what is the truth?" I met his eyes. Those same storm-gray eyes I'd stared into all night, just in a different face. That we're two broken people trying to build something real. That's truth enough. For the first time since I'd met him, Caden smiled. Really smiled. It transformed his severe face into something almost gentle. "Thank you, Mira." "For what?" "For seeing us," he said softly. "Both of us." A servant knocked on the door then, announcing that breakfast was ready. Caden composed himself instantly, snapping back into his royal mask. But just before he turned away, he touched my hand briefly, a gesture so quick I almost missed it. And in that touch, I felt a promise forming. This was going to change everything. Chapter 4. The Library of Secrets. The palace transformed around me over the next week. I was no longer just another servant in gray, invisible and interchangeable. Now I was the OMEAGA who spent her nights with the king or the beast, depending on who was telling the story. The whispers followed me through every corridor. Some called me brave. Others called me foolish. A few called me a witch, who'd ensnared the king with dark magic. I ignored them all. My days fell into a strange rhythm. I'd wake in the circular chamber at dawn, write my account of the night's conversations, and watch Caden read them with an expression somewhere between wonder and grief. We'd talk briefly, awkward, careful exchanges where we were both trying to figure out who we were to each other in daylight. Then I'd leave, spend the day in my assigned quarters reading or walking the palace gardens, and return at sunset to meet the beast. It should have been exhausting. Instead, I felt more alive than I ever had. "Tell me about your childhood," the beast said on the fourth night. He was sprawled on the floor near the fireplace he'd started, a fire on the second night after noticing I was cold, looking more like an enormous dog than a monster. "There's not much to tell," I said, from my usual spot at the table. "I was born Omega in a family that valued Omegas. For 13 years, everything was fine. Then my body decided not to cooperate, and everything changed." "How did they treat you?" "After?" I set down the book I'd been pretending to read. My mother stopped looking at me directly. She'd addressed the space next to my head instead, like I was a ghost she couldn't quite see. My father became cold, every word calculated to remind me I was a disappointment. "And Lydia?" I paused. "Lydia tried, but she was young and scared of losing their love too. I don't blame her for it." The beast rolled onto his side, propping his massive head on one clawed hand. The gesture was so human it made my chest ache. "Did you ever hate them for it?" "Sometimes. Mostly I just felt numb." I pulled my knees up to my chest. "It's strange. I was more isolated, surrounded by family than I am locked in a room with you. Because I see you." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment then. "I had a brother. Did you know that?" I shook my head. This was new information, nothing in the histories mentioned another prince. Younger by 3 years, his name was Tobias. The beast's voice went soft. "He was everything I wasn't. Warm, charming, easy to love. My father hated him for it." "What happened to him?" "The curse." The beast's claws scraped against the stone floor. "My father's deal required a sacrifice. The demon he bargained with wanted blood. Royal blood. So he chose Tobias, killed him in a ritual when my brother was only 15 years old. And with that blood, he bought himself 20 more years of power." Horror washed through me. "Your father murdered his own son?" "My father was a monster long before I ever became one." The beast's eyes glowed brighter in the firelight. He told me after. Wanted me to understand the price of power, the necessity of sacrifice. Said that when my time came to rule, I'd have to make similar choices. "Is that when you decided you didn't want to be king?" "No. That's when I decided that, if I ever became king, I'd burn the whole system down, rather than let it continue." He lifted his head, looking at me directly. "The crown isn't power, Mira. It's a curse that gets passed down generation to generation. My father got it from his father, who got it from his. Each one more twisted than the last. And I'm supposed to continue it? Find a mate, produce an heir, teach that child to be just as cold and cruel as necessary to survive? Then don't." He laughed bitterly. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" I unfolded myself and moved closer to him, close enough to see the individual strands of silver in his dark fur. "You're the king. Change the rules. The council can be replaced, overruled, ignored." I sat down on the floor near him, surprising both of us. "You have power, Caden. Both of you. You just have to decide to use it differently." The beast stared at me, and I watched something shift in his expression. "You called me Caden. Isn't that your name?" The king's name. Mine is He stopped. "I don't know if I have a different name. I've always just been the beast. The curse. The monster." An idea crystallized in my mind. "Then choose one. Name yourself something that isn't about what was done to you." "Name myself?" He sounded almost childlike in his confusion. "Yes, people do it all the time. They outgrow the names their parents gave them and choose new ones that fit better." I tilted my head, studying him. "What feels right? What name would you want?" He was silent for a long time, thinking. Then, softly, "Ash." "Ash?" What remains after fire burns everything away. What rises after destruction? He met my eyes. It feels honest. Ash, I repeated, testing the name. It fit him, this raw, honest version of Caden that existed in the darkness. I like it. Yeah? Something like hope flickered in his expression. Yeah. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the fire. After a while, Ash, I was already thinking of him by his new name, spoke again. Can I ask you something personal? You've already asked me a dozen personal things tonight. This is different. He shifted, looking almost nervous. Your infertility, does it hurt? Not just emotionally, but physically? The question caught me off guard. Most people avoided discussing my condition entirely, treating it like a shameful secret. Sometimes, I get cramps where my heat should be, like my body is trying to do something it can't quite accomplish. And there's this hollowness, like something essential is missing. I understand that, he said quietly. The transformation hurts, every bone breaking and reforming, every muscle tearing apart. But the worst part is the hollowness after, waking up human, and knowing pieces of myself are locked away until nightfall. Never feeling complete. We're both trapped in bodies that betray us. I murmured. Yes. I reached out slowly, telegraphing my movement, and laid my hand on his furred arm. He went very still, staring at the point of contact like he couldn't believe it was real. Thank you, I said softly, for asking, for caring about the answer. His voice was rough when he spoke. You're the first person to touch me in this form without flinching. You're not as frightening as you think you are. I'm a monster, Mira. You're a person cursed into a monstrous shape. That's different. I didn't remove my hand. Monsters don't ask about my pain. Monsters don't choose names that mean rebirth. Monsters don't spend their nights talking about dead brothers and lost childhoods. Then what am I? Lonely, I said simply. Just like me. Something shifted in the air between us. A recognition deeper than words. Ash turned his hand over beneath mine, carefully, so his claws wouldn't scratch me. His palm was rough and warm. I think I'm starting to understand, he murmured. Understand what? Why he chose you. Why you're the one who might break this curse. His thumb, clawed but gentle, brushed across my knuckles. You don't see the monster or the king, you just see us, the person underneath everything. My heart was beating too fast. Is that enough? To break a curse? I don't know. But it's more than anyone else has managed. He squeezed my hand gently. Stay with me, Mira. Keep seeing us. Let us see you. And maybe we'll find something real, I finished. Yes. We sat like that until the fire burned low, and I began to yawn. Ash released my hand reluctantly and moved back to his corner while I prepared for sleep. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the distance between us seemed smaller. Just before I closed my eyes, I heard him whisper, "Good night, Mira." "Good night, Ash." On the 7th day, Caden did something unexpected. I'd spent the morning in my quarters, writing my account of the previous night, when a servant knocked on my door. "Miss Thornwell? His Majesty requests your presence in the East Wing." Immediately, my stomach dropped. The East Wing was the public section of the palace throne rooms and council chambers and places where I definitely didn't belong. Had something gone wrong? Had the council discovered our arrangement? I followed the servant through increasingly grand corridors until we stopped in front of an ornate door I didn't recognize. "His Majesty is waiting inside," the servant said, then disappeared. I opened the door and gasped. It was a library, but not just any library. This was a cathedral of books, 3 stories tall, with spiral staircases connecting each level. Thousands upon thousands of volumes lined the walls, their spines gleaming in the sunlight that streamed through stained glass windows. The air smelled like old paper and leather and possibility. "Do you like it?" Caden's voice came from somewhere in the stacks. I spun to find him emerging from behind a shelf, looking uncertain. Vulnerable. "Like it? Caden, this is..." I couldn't find words. "How? This wing has been closed for decades. My grandfather's collection, gathering dust." He moved closer, and I noticed he was carrying a stack of books. "I had it cleaned and restored. For you. For me? Ash mentioned you like to read, that you taught yourself by stealing books. A small smile. I thought you deserved your own library. A place that's yours, where you can escape during the day the way you help me escape at night. Tears burned behind my eyes. No one had ever given me something like this. Something that wasn't practical or necessary but purely for joy. For me, I don't know what to say. Say you'll use it. He set the books on a nearby table. Say you'll spend your days here, surrounded by stories. Say, he stopped, swallowing hard. Say that you're happy here, with us. I crossed the distance between us and took his hands. He startled, looking down at our joined fingers like they were something miraculous. I'm happy here, I said honestly. Happier than I've been in years, maybe ever. Even though you're locked away each night with a monster? Especially because of that. I squeezed his hands. Because that monster talks to me like I matter. Because you, both of you, see me as more than my broken designation. You're not broken, Caden said fiercely. You're perfect. Exactly as you are. The words hit me like a physical blow. Perfect. No one had ever called me perfect. Caden, I need to tell you something. He released one of my hands but kept hold of the other. These past 7 nights, reading your accounts, knowing what you and Ash talk about, it's changing me. I'm starting to remember things. Not just fragments. Real memories. Of you. Of our conversations. Hope flared in my chest. That's good, isn't it? That means the curse is weakening. Maybe. Or maybe it means I'm integrating. Becoming more whole. He looked at me intently. Mira. I think I'm where. He stopped, frustrated. There's a question Ash keeps wanting to ask you, every night, but he stops himself because he's afraid of the answer. My heart hammered. What question? Will you marry me? The world tilted. What? Not now, not yet, but eventually, when the curse breaks, if it breaks. The words tumbled out of him in a rush. The council requires me to choose a mate, and I've chosen you, not because you're Omega, not because you're convenient, but because you're the only person who's ever seen both parts of me and stayed, because you're brave and honest and kind. Because Caden, stop. I pulled my hand free, my mind reeling. You can't propose to me, we barely know each other. Ash knows you. And I know you through him. Through your words. He gestured desperately. Isn't that enough? I don't know. I stepped back, suddenly overwhelmed. This is happening too fast. 7 days ago, I was invisible. A servant. And now you're asking me to be queen? I'm asking you to keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Spending nights with Ash, days with me. Let us court you properly. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, say yes. And if I'm never ready? Pain flashed across his face. Then I'll honor our original agreement. You'll get your freedom, your reward, and you can leave. I won't force you into anything. I turned away, staring at the library he'd built for me. The library that represented everything I'd ever wanted: beauty, knowledge, a place that was mine. He'd given me this before asking for anything in return. That meant something. I need time, I said finally. To think. To figure out what I want. Of course. His voice was carefully controlled. Take all the time you need. The offer stands. No pressure. No expectations. I faced him again. Thank you. For the library. For being honest. I gestured vaguely at everything. For all of it. He smiled, sad and hopeful at once. You're welcome, Mira. He left me alone then, surrounded by thousands of stories. Stories of love and loss, triumph and tragedy, curses broken and curses eternal. I pulled a book at random from the shelf and sank into a plush chair by the window, but I couldn't focus on the words. All I could think about was the question hanging between us, waiting for an answer I didn't know how to give. Will you marry me? Chapter 5. The Deepest Wound. That night, I returned to the circular chamber with my heart in my throat. The transformation had already begun when I entered. Ash was on his knees, his body contorting as bones reshaped and fur sprouted. I'd seen it twice now, but it never got easier to watch. The pain was too raw, too visceral. When it was over, he stayed on the floor for a long moment, breathing hard. Ash? I moved toward him cautiously. Are you all right? He lifted his head, and his eyes were wild, confused. Mira, you came back. Of course I came back. Why wouldn't I? He asked you to marry him. It wasn't a question. Somehow, the memories were transferring faster now. I felt it. The fear. The desperation. Gods. Mira. I'm so sorry. We shouldn't have. I shouldn't have let him. Ash, breathe. I knelt in front of him, close enough to see my reflection in his glowing eyes. It's okay. It's not okay. You've been here 7 days, and we're already asking you to tie yourself to us forever? That's not fair. That's not. He broke off, shaking his head. You should leave, before this gets worse, before we trap you the way we're trapped. I'm not leaving. Why not? He looked at me with such anguish it made my chest ache. We're offering you a nightmare dressed up as a fairy tale. A king who turns into a monster every night. A life locked away from everything normal. Why would you stay? I reached out and cupped his furred face in my hands. He froze, shock written across his features. Because for the first time in my life, I don't feel like a mistake, I said quietly. Because you talk to me like I'm interesting. Because Caden builds me libraries. Because both of you see me as something more than my broken body. I stroked my thumb along his jaw. Because I think I might be starting to care about you. Both of you. Mira, I'm not ready to marry you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm not leaving either. I held his gaze. Can that be enough for now? Something in his expression cracked open. Yes. Gods. Yes. That's more than enough. He leaned into my touch, his eyes closing briefly. When he opened them again, they were calmer, more centered. Thank you, he whispered, for staying, for touching me without fear, he stopped, seeming to struggle with words, for making me feel human even when I'm not. You are human, just in a different shape. That's not what everyone else thinks. The servants are terrified of me. The guards think I'm a demon. The council wants me locked away permanently. His voice turned bitter. They'd kill me if they could. Put Caden on the throne permanently and pretend the beast never existed. Can they do that? Is there a way to separate you? I don't know. Maybe. But it would probably kill us both. He pulled back from my hands, and I immediately missed the contact. The curse binds us together. We're two halves of one broken whole. Remove one half, and the other dies. I thought about that, about Caden's controlled precision, and Ash's raw honesty, about how they needed each other to be complete. Then they stay together, both of you, no matter what. Even if it means being bound to a monster? You're not. I started, then stopped. This was an old argument, one we'd circled around multiple times. He didn't believe he was worth caring for. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I could show him differently. Tell me about the worst thing you've ever done, I said instead. In this form. The thing that makes you believe you're irredeemable. Ash recoiled. Mira. No. You don't want to know that. Yes, I do. Because whatever it is, you need to say it out loud. Let someone else carry the weight of it with you. I've killed people. I know, Caden told me. You protect him during the day by eliminating threats at night. It's not just that. His claws scraped against the stone floor, leaving grooves. 3 years ago, there was an assassination attempt. A group of nobles who wanted to overthrow the king. They broke into the castle at night, when I was transformed, and he swallowed hard. I tore them apart, all 12 of them. I didn't just kill them, I destroyed them, made them into warnings. And the worst part? I enjoyed it. The confession hung in the air between us, ugly and raw. Why did you enjoy it? I asked quietly. He looked at me sharply. Does it matter? Yes. Because, he struggled with the words. Because for once, I was useful. For once, my monstrous form served a purpose beyond just being a curse. I protected Caden, saved his life. And in that moment, I wasn't just the beast. I was a guardian. Understanding washed through me. You felt like you mattered. Yes. And that feeling, that purpose, it made the violence easier, made me crave more opportunities to prove my worth. His voice dropped to a whisper. What kind of person enjoys killing, Mira? What kind of monster am I? I moved closer again, until I was kneeling right in front of him. You're the kind of person who's been told your entire existence that you're worthless, that you're just a curse, a punishment, something to be endured. And when you finally found a way to matter, your brain latched onto it desperately. That doesn't make you evil. It makes you human. I'm not human. Not like this. Your shape doesn't determine your humanity, Ash. Your choices do. I took his clawed hand in both of mine. You could have killed me that first night, could have hurt me any night since, but you haven't. You've been gentle and careful and kind. That's who you are. Not the violence you've done to protect someone you love. How can you say that so easily? How can you sit here, holding my hand, knowing what these claws have done? Because I'm looking at you, not your past. Because everyone deserves the chance to be more than their worst moment. I squeezed his hand. Because I think you're worth caring about. Ash made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. You're either the most naive person I've ever met, or the most compassionate. Can't I be both? Apparently. He turned his hand over in mine, carefully threading our fingers together. His claws were sharp, but he held me like I was made of glass. Mira, I need to tell you something. About the curse. About what it means if you stay. My heart kicked up. Okay. The curse requires someone to love the beast without knowing he's the king. You know now, you know we're the same person. Which means... He paused, choosing words carefully. If you develop feelings for me, it might not count. The curse might not break, because you can't separate your feelings for Ash from your knowledge of Caden. So I'm contaminated, I said flatly. Knowing the truth ruins the magic. Maybe. We don't know for sure. The witch who cast the original curse is long dead, and the terms were deliberately vague. He looked at me intently. What I'm saying is, you might be doing all this for nothing, spending your nights locked away with me, letting Caden court you during the day, and at the end of it, the curse might still remain. We might still be broken. And you're telling me this now because it's not fair to let you continue without knowing. If you want to leave, I'll understand. Caden will understand. We'll honor our agreement, give you everything we promised, and you can go live your life. I was quiet for a long moment, turning this new information over in my mind. He was right. I might be wasting my time. Might be pouring effort into something that couldn't be fixed. The practical thing would be to cut my losses and leave. But when had I ever been practical about the things that mattered? I'm not leaving, I said finally. Mira, I'm not leaving, I repeated, more firmly. Curse or no curse, magic or no magic. I came here because you offered me a chance to matter, to be seen. And you've kept that promise. Both of you have. So I'm staying. Even if it doesn't work? Even if we're stuck like this forever? Even then. I met his eyes. Because maybe the point isn't breaking the curse. Maybe the point is finding people who see you as you are, and choose to stay anyway. Ash stared at me for a long moment, his expression shifting through shock and disbelief, and finally landing on something that looked like awe. How are you real? He whispered. I could ask you the same thing. He laughed, a real laugh, bright and surprised. Then he did something that shocked us both. He pulled me into an embrace. It should have been terrifying. He was massive, covered in fur and muscle and claws. He could have crushed me without trying, but instead, he held me carefully, gently, like I was precious. I wrapped my arms around his neck and held on. We stayed like that for a long time, two broken people finding comfort in each other's arms. When we finally pulled apart, something had shifted between us. Something deeper than friendship, more complicated than simple affection. I need to tell you something too, I said quietly. About my infertility. About what it means. You don't have to. I want to. I took a breath, steadying myself. When the physicians told me I couldn't have children, they didn't just mean I'd never get pregnant. They meant my body is wrong, fundamentally broken in ways that can't be fixed. My heat never came because the parts of me that should produce hormones don't work. My scent never developed because my designation is incomplete. Mira, let me finish. I wrapped my arms around myself. For years, I thought that meant I was worthless. That my only value as an Omega was reproduction. And without that, I was nothing. And everyone around me confirmed it: my father's disappointment, my mother's avoidance, the way people looked through me instead of at me. Ash was very still, listening intently. But here's the thing I'm starting to realize. I continued. Maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm just different. Maybe the fact that I can't fulfill traditional Omega roles doesn't make me worthless. It just makes me suited for something else. I looked at him, like spending nights with a beast who needs someone who won't be overwhelmed by alpha instincts. Like being the person who can see both halves of a cursed king without being blinded by designation politics. You're not worthless, Ash said fiercely. You're extraordinary. I'm starting to believe that. Because of you. Because of how you look at me. How do I look at you? Like I'm valuable exactly as I am. Not despite my brokenness, but including it. Like all of me is worth seeing. Ash reached out and cupped my face in his large, clawed hand. You are worth seeing. Every part of you. The pain and the strength and the fear and the courage. All of it. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I'd spent so long holding everything and all the hurt and shame and loneliness that I'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone else witness it. I'm scared, I admitted. Of caring too much. Of letting myself hope this could work. Of being disappointed again. I'm scared too, he said softly. Of hurting you. Of failing you. Of being exactly the monster everyone thinks I am. Then we'll be scared together. He smiled, that strange, beautiful expression that transformed his lupine face. Together, we talked until dawn, sharing our deepest fears and oldest wounds. I told him about the cat my father killed when he found it, about the tutor who called me defective, about the day I realized my own family had given up on me. He told me about his brother's death, about the first time he killed as the beast, about the loneliness of waking up human with only fragments of memory. We built something that night. Not love, not yet, but the foundation for it. Trust, honesty, the knowledge that we could show each other our worst parts and still be accepted. When the sun rose and Caden emerged from the transformation, he found me holding Ash's clawed hand and crying quietly. Mira? His voice was rough, concerned. What happened? Did he hurt you? No. I wiped my eyes and smiled. He helped me. We helped each other. Caden knelt beside me, reading something in my expression. You told him. About the curse, not counting if you know we're the same. Yes, and I'm staying anyway. His eyes widened. Even though it might not work? Even then. I looked between them. Caden solid and human. Ash beginning to fade as the transformation completed. I'm not here to break a curse anymore. I'm here because I want to be. Because you both matter to me. Caden took my free hand, the one not holding Ash's, and brought it to his lips. Thank you, he whispered against my knuckles. Thank you for choosing us. The transformation finished. Ash disappeared completely, leaving only Caden kneeling on the stone floor. But I could still feel the echo of Ash's presence, the warmth of his hand in mine, the sound of his voice saying together. I have a question, Caden said, still holding my hand. Not about marriage, not about the future, just about right now. Okay, are you happy? Here, with us? Is this enough? I thought about my library, full of stories waiting to be read. About my nights with Ash, full of honest conversation and comfortable silence. About my mornings with Caden, where we were slowly learning how to be vulnerable with each other. Yes, I said simply. This is enough. For now. That was all the answer either of us needed. Chapter 6. The Broken Bargain. 3 more weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost like happiness. My days were spent in the library, surrounded by books and sunlight. Sometimes Caden would join me, sitting in comfortable silence while we both read. Other times, he'd ask me to walk with him through the gardens, where we'd talk about everything and nothing: philosophy, politics, the novels we'd both loved as children. He never pushed, never demanded more than I was willing to give. But I could feel the question hanging between us, patient and persistent. Will you marry me? My nights belonged to Ash. We'd talk for hours, sharing stories and secrets. He taught me about the castle's hidden passages, the history written in its stones. I taught him about literature, reading aloud from my favorite books, while he listened with his head in my lap like an enormous, contented wolf. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. Sometimes I'd fall asleep mid-sentence and wake at dawn to find him watching over me, keeping me safe from nightmares I no longer had. I was beginning to understand what love felt like. Not the desperate, all-consuming passion of stories, but something quieter, more solid, the knowledge that someone sees you completely and chooses to stay. I was beginning to think I might say yes. And then, on the 28th night, everything shattered. I arrived at the circular chamber just before sunset, carrying a new book I wanted to share with Ash. But when I opened the door, I found Caden still there, pacing like a caged animal, his face pale with something that looked like panic. Caden, what's wrong? You should have left already. The sun is almost... I need to tell you something. His words came out in a rush. Before the transformation, before I lose the courage, dread pooled in my stomach. What is it? The curse. He stopped pacing, facing me directly. I haven't been completely honest about how it works. What do you mean? The witch who cast it, she didn't just curse me to transform every night. She cursed me to become a beast until someone loved that form without knowing it was human. But there's a second part. A condition I didn't tell you. My hands clenched around the book. What condition? The person who loves the beast can never know he's the king. If they discover the truth, if they see both forms and understand we're the same person, the spell is broken. Not the curse. The spell that might have ended the curse. Understanding crashed over me like ice water. I've already seen both forms. I've known from the beginning. Yes. So I was never going to break the curse. It was impossible from the start. Yes. I stepped back, my mind reeling. Why didn't you tell me this before? Why let me think I could help? Because I needed you to stay. The words burst out of him, desperate and raw. I needed someone who could be with both of us without being overwhelmed by biology. Someone who could see past the monster and the crown to the person underneath. And you did. You've done everything I hoped for and more. But it doesn't matter. The curse won't break. It might. He moved toward me, hands outstretched. There are theories, possibilities that if the love is strong enough, true enough, it could override the original conditions. But, I don't know. I've been searching for answers, reading every text on curse breaking I can find, but you gambled with my time, my emotions, my hope. I set the book down carefully before I could throw it. You let me believe I was building something real when you knew it might be for nothing. It is real, his voice cracked. Mira, what we have, what all three of us have built, that's real. Curse or no curse, the feelings are real. Are they? Or am I just convenient? The broken Omega who can't do better than a cursed king? That's not fair. None of this is fair. I was shaking now, anger and hurt warring inside my chest. You told me I mattered, that you saw me, but you were using me the whole time. Just another tool to try to fix your broken curse. No, Mira, no. It started that way maybe, but it became so much more. You have to believe me. The sun dipped below the horizon. Caden gasped, his body beginning to convulse. The transformation was starting. Mira. His voice was already changing, deepening. Please, don't leave. Let me explain. You've had 4 weeks to explain. You chose to lie instead. I turned toward the door, my vision blurring with tears. Behind me, I heard the sounds of the transformation bones cracking. Caden's cries of pain turning into something more animal. My hand was on the doorknob when Ash's voice stopped me. Don't go. I looked back. He was there, fully transformed, massive and powerful and heartbreakingly familiar. But for the first time since I'd met him, I felt afraid. Not of his form, of what he represented. The lie I'd been living. Why shouldn't I? My voice came out hollow. You knew. All along, you knew I couldn't break the curse. Was any of it real? Or was I just an experiment? It was real. He took a step toward me, then stopped when I flinched. Pain flashed across his face. Every conversation. Every moment of truth. Every time I told you that you mattered, it was real, Mira. All of it. Then why lie? Because I was terrified. The words exploded out of him. Terrified that if you knew the curse couldn't be broken through you, you'd leave. And I couldn't. His voice broke. I couldn't lose you. Not when I'd just found someone who saw me as more than a monster. So you trapped me instead. Made me think I had a purpose here when really I was just… what? A companion? A pet to keep the beast entertained? You're not a pet, you're… He stopped, his clawed hands clenching. Gods, Mira. You're everything. You're the first person who's ever made me feel human. Who's ever chosen to stay. Who's ever touched me without fear. How could I risk losing that? By being honest. By trusting me to make my own choices. You're right. He sank to the floor, suddenly looking defeated. You're absolutely right. I should have told you. We should have told you. But we were selfish, and desperate, and so fucking lonely that we chose to deceive you instead. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the hurt and betrayal. But seeing him like this, broken and honest, and full of regret, made it harder. Did you mean it? I asked quietly. When you said I mattered, when you said you were starting to care for me, was any of that true? Ash lifted his head, and his eyes were devastating. I love you. I've been falling in love with you since the first night you asked my name, since you saw me as something worth naming instead of just enduring. He stood slowly, carefully. I love your honesty and your courage and the way you read to me like I'm worth the effort. I love that you touch me without fearing what these hands have done. I love you, Mira. And that's the truest thing I've ever said. The words hung in the air between us, beautiful and terrible. I love you too, I whispered, and I realized it was true. Somewhere in the past 4 weeks, I'd fallen for both of them, Caden's careful vulnerability and Ash's raw honesty. But I don't know if that's enough. Not when it's built on lies. Then let me rebuild it on truth. He moved closer, slowly enough that I could step away if I wanted. Let me spend the rest of this night telling you everything, every secret, every fear, every piece of information I've withheld, and then you can decide whether what we have is worth salvaging. I should have left. Should have walked away from the beautiful lies and the complicated truths. But I'd never been good at doing what I should. Okay, I said finally. Tell me everything. We sat on opposite sides of the room, as much distance as the space allowed. And Ash told me everything. About the curse's exact wording. The beast must be loved by one who knows not that he is king. Only through this love freely given shall both parts become whole. About his father's murder of Tobias, and how the demon who'd been summoned used the royal blood to bind Caden to a beast form. About the council's ultimatum. Choose a mate by his 30th birthday. Or they'd have him declared unfit, and install his uncle as regent. About the desperation that drove him to hold the mating ball, knowing it was futile. About seeing me in the shadows and realizing I was the answer to a question he hadn't known how to ask. The original plan was simple, Ash said, his voice tired. You'd spend time with me, grow to care for me, and never know I was Caden. But then you saw both forms that first night, and everything became complicated. So you decided to just not tell me it was hopeless? We decided to hope. He looked at me across the distance. There's so little written about curse breaking. Most of it is theory and speculation. But there's a concept true love's exception. The idea that if love is genuine enough, powerful enough, it can override even the strictest magical conditions. That's not much to build hope on. It's all we had. He flexed his claws against the stone floor. And maybe we were wrong to risk your heart on such slim odds. But Mira, you have to understand you're the first person in 7 years who's made me feel like this curse might be worth surviving. Like there might be something on the other side of this nightmare worth living for. I was quiet for a long time, processing everything he'd told me. The lies hurt, the deception stung. But underneath all of it, I could see the shape of their desperation, 2 halves of a broken person, trying desperately to become whole. What happens now? I asked finally. If the curse can't be broken, if I can't break it because I know too much, what's your plan? I marry someone else. His voice was flat. Someone who doesn't know about the beast. Someone who can be kept separate from my night form. We stage it carefully. They love Caden during the day, love Ash at night, without realizing it's the same person. The curse breaks. I become human. And I spend the rest of my life bound to someone I don't love, grateful for a cure that cost me everything that mattered. That's your plan? That's the council's plan. They've already selected candidates. Beautiful OMEAGA nobles who they've carefully vetted and prepared. After tonight, after I've had time to recover from my rejection of the mating ball candidates, they'll start introducing them. My stomach dropped. When? Next week. He looked away. I've been putting them off, using our time together as an excuse. But they're getting impatient. If I don't choose soon, they'll choose for me, so I have a week. The words tasted bitter. One more week of this before you replace me with someone who can actually break the curse. I don't want to replace you. I want. He stopped, shaking his head helplessly. It doesn't matter what I want. I'm trapped by duty and politics and a curse I didn't ask for. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching this conversation happen to someone else. I need to think, I said quietly. About everything you've told me. About what I want. About whether this is worth fighting for. Of course, take whatever time you need. Ash didn't try to stop me. The door is unlocked. It always has been. You can leave whenever you want. I looked at the door. At the chance to walk away from this complicated, painful situation and return to my simple, invisible life. But then I looked at Ash. At the way he held himself carefully contained, trying not to influence my decision. At the hope and fear warring in his eyes. I'm not leaving tonight, I said finally. But I can't promise I'll stay tomorrow. That's fair. I moved to the bed and sat on the edge, my mind churning. Ash stayed where he was, giving me space. The silence stretched between us, not comfortable anymore, but not hostile either. Just heavy. Tell me about the OMEAGA they want you to marry, I said eventually. What's she like? I don't know. I refused to meet her. Why? He looked at me directly. Because meeting her would mean accepting that you weren't enough. And I'm not ready to accept that yet. Something in my chest cracked. Ash, I know it's selfish. I know I should be practical, should meet her, court her, try to build something that might work. But every time I think about it, all I can see is you. You reading to me, you touching my face without flinching, you choosing to stay even when you were afraid. His voice dropped. How do I give that up? How do I replace the person who made me feel human with someone who'll only ever see the king? I don't know, I whispered. Neither do I. We sat in silence as the night deepened. I should have been angry. Should have been planning my exit. But instead, all I felt was a profound sadness. For him. For us. For the thing we'd built that might not be strong enough to survive reality. Mira? Ash's voice was tentative. Can I ask you something? Yes. If the curse could be broken, if there was a way to make this work, would you want that? Would you want a life with us? I closed my eyes, thinking about it. Really thinking. Not about the impossibility or the complications or the politics. Just about the core question. Did I want them? Both of them? Yes, I said finally. I would. Then that's worth fighting for. He stood, moving to sit on the floor near the bed close, but not touching. I don't know how yet, but if there's even a chance, I want to find it. For you. For us. Even if it means defying the council? Especially then. His smile was fierce. I told you I wanted to burn the whole system down. Maybe this is how it starts. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the beast who'd chosen his own name. Who'd shared his deepest shame. Who'd just confessed he loved me despite every rational reason not to. We need a plan, I said slowly. A real one, not just hope and desperation. Agreed. And no more lies, ever. Even if the truth is painful. I promise. No more lies. I reached down and took his clawed hand in mine. Then, Let's figure this out. Together. His fingers tightened around mine carefully. Together. Chapter 7. The Year of Hollow Freedom. We spent the rest of that night strategizing like generals preparing for war. Ash told me everything he knew about curse magic, how it bound itself to bloodlines, how it fed on specific conditions, how breaking even one clause could sometimes unravel the whole thing. I told him about every fairy tale I'd ever read, every story where love defeated impossible odds, looking for patterns we could exploit. By dawn, we had the skeleton of a plan. It was desperate and dangerous and probably wouldn't work, but it was something. When Caden emerged from the transformation, I was ready. I'm not leaving, I said before he could speak. But things have to change. He looked at me warily, hope and fear mixing in his expression. What do you mean? I mean we stop playing by the curse's rules. We stop letting it define what's possible. I stood, moving to face him directly. You said true love's exception might work, that love powerful enough could override the conditions. So, let's test that. How? By being honest. By choosing each other openly, deliberately, in front of witnesses. I took a breath. Marry me, Caden. Not in secret. Not as a political arrangement. Publicly. Let the kingdom see you choose the broken Omega servant. Let the curse see that our love exists, despite every reason it shouldn't. His eyes widened. You're saying yes? After everything. I'm saying yes because of everything. Because you lied and then told the truth. Because Ash loves me enough to let me go. Because both of you are worth fighting for. I moved closer. But if we do this, we do it my way. No more hiding. No more half measures. We face the council, the curse, and whatever comes after together. Caden's face transformed, the careful royal mask shattering to reveal something raw and desperate and joyful. You're sure? I'm terrified. But yes. I'm sure. He crossed the distance between us in 2 strides and pulled me into his arms. I felt him shaking, this powerful, controlled king reduced to trembling by the weight of his relief. Thank you, he whispered against my hair. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for being worth choosing. We stayed like that for a long moment before I pulled back. Now comes the hard part, I said. We need to convince the council that this is the right choice. That I can break the curse even though I know about Ash. They'll fight us. They have their own candidate already selected. Then we'll fight back. I straightened my shoulders. I'm not a noble Omega. I'm not politically connected. But I'm the one you love. That has to count for something. Caden's smile was fierce. It counts for everything. We presented our case to the council that afternoon. The council chamber was exactly as intimidating as I'd imagined, all dark wood and judging eyes. 12 lords sat in a semicircle, each one representing a major noble house. They looked at me like I was an insect that had wandered into their fortress by mistake. Your Majesty, Lord Westmere began, his voice dripping with condescension. Surely you're not serious about this, servant. Her name is Mira Thornwell, Caden said coldly. And yes, I'm quite serious. I'm choosing her as my mate. But she's nobody. Another Lord Harwick, I thought, gestured at me dismissively. No family connections, no political value, and she's defective. An Omega who can't even fulfill the basic requirements of her designation. Watch your tongue. Caden's voice dropped to a growl. You're speaking about my future queen. The council erupted in protests. I stood silent beside Caden's throne, trying to keep my face neutral while my insides churned with anxiety. Lord Westmere raised a hand for silence. Your Majesty, we understand that you've grown, attached to this girl. But surely you see that she's unsuitable. The kingdom needs a king who can rule without being cursed, Caden interrupted. And Mira is the one who can break that curse. How? Westmere's eyes narrowed. What makes this defective Omega special? I stepped forward before Caden could answer. If I was going to be queen, I needed to find my own voice. Because I love both parts of him, I said clearly. The king and the beast, not despite the curse, but including it. That's what breaks this kind of magic, not ignorance, but acceptance. The council stared at me. Several lords exchanged skeptical glances. The curse requires the beast to be loved by someone who doesn't know he's the king, Harwick said slowly. You know. Therefore, you cannot fulfill the conditions. The curse requires love given freely to the beast, I countered. Nothing about the original wording says that love must be given in ignorance, only that it must be real, and my love is real. This is sophistry, Westmere snapped. You're trying to twist the words to fit your desires. I'm trying to save your king, I shot back, which is more than you've done in 7 years. The chamber went silent. I'd just insulted the most powerful men in the kingdom. Caden's hand found mine, squeezing gently. Westmere's face was red. Your Majesty, I must protest this girl's insolence. This girl is my choice, Caden said firmly. And unless you want to challenge the crown's authority to choose its own mate, you'll accept it. The threat hung in the air. The council could theoretically override the king's choice, but doing so would be tantamount to declaring him unfit to rule. It would start a constitutional crisis that could tear the kingdom apart. Lord Westmere knew this. They all did. Very well, he said finally, his voice tight. But we require proof. If this Omega truly can break the curse, let her do so. You have 1 year, Your Majesty. 1 year to be freed of your beast form. If the curse remains after that time, we will require you to set this girl aside and choose from our approved candidates. My stomach dropped. 1 year. It wasn't enough time. We didn't even know if what we were attempting would work. But Caden squeezed my hand again and nodded. Agreed. 1 year. The council dismissed us with barely concealed contempt. As we left the chamber, I heard them already whispering, making plans for what they'd do when I inevitably failed. The wedding was held 3 weeks later. It should have been a grand celebration, a kingdom-wide festival to mark the king's choice of mate. Instead, it was a small, quiet ceremony in the palace chapel. Just us, a handful of witnesses, and a priest who looked uncomfortable the entire time. My family wasn't invited. Caden had sent them compensation more than generous, enough that they'd never have to work again. In return, they'd signed papers relinquishing any claim to me. My father's signature was firm and unhesitating. Lydia had sent a letter. I'm happy for you, even if I don't understand. Be brave, little sister. Be free. I wore a simple white dress. No crown, no jewels. Just me. Caden wore his formal attire, but he'd refused the ceremonial crown. I'm not marrying you as a king, he'd said. I'm marrying you as a man. When the priest asked if anyone objected, the silence was damning. No one celebrated, no one cheered, but no one stopped us either. We spoke our vows in voices that didn't shake. We exchanged rings that felt heavy with possibility. And when Caden kissed me our first kiss, it tasted like defiance and hope. We were married, and the curse remained. If you've ever fought for something everyone said was impossible, leave a comment, because Mira and Caden need to know they're not alone in this battle. The months that followed were the strangest of my life. By day, I was queen, a title I wore like an ill-fitting coat. The court whispered behind my back. The nobles snubbed me at every opportunity. Even the servants who'd once worked alongside me now looked at me with a mixture of resentment and confusion. Only Caden made it bearable. He stood by me at every function, his hand on my back, his support unwavering. He taught me politics and diplomacy. He showed me how to navigate the treacherous waters of court life. He loved me openly, defiantly, daring anyone to question his choice. By night, I was still just Mira, Ash's companion, in the circular chamber. We continued our conversations, our careful building of something real. But now there was an edge of desperation to everything. A countdown ticking in the background. 1 year. You have 1 year. We tried everything. We researched ancient texts on curse breaking. We consulted with scholars and wise women and anyone who might have answers. We performed rituals and spoke incantations and poured our hearts into every possible solution. Nothing worked. The curse held firm. Every sunset, Caden transformed into ash. Every sunrise, he returned to human form. We were no closer to breaking the spell than we'd been on that first night. Maybe it's not enough, I whispered one night, 6 months into our marriage. Ash and I were sitting by the fire, my head resting against his furred shoulder. Maybe I can't break it because the curse knows I know. Or maybe we haven't found the right trigger yet, Ash countered. But his voice lacked conviction. Ash, what if? I stopped, almost afraid to voice the thought. What if the council is right? What if I'm not the answer? He pulled me closer, careful of his claws. Then we find another way. We run, leave the kingdom behind and start somewhere new. You can't run from a curse. Maybe not. But I'd rather be cursed and with you than cured and bound to someone I don't love. I tilted my head to look at him. You mean that? Every word. His eyes glowed in the firelight. Mira, you've given me something I never thought I'd have, someone who sees all of me and stays. That's worth more than being human. That's worth everything. Tears stung my eyes. I love you, both of you. So much it terrifies me. I love you too. He pressed his muzzle gently against my forehead. And that love is real, regardless of what the curse does or doesn't do. But love, as I was learning, wasn't always enough. The year passed in a blur of desperate attempts and crushing failures. We tried everything: magical interventions, symbolic gestures, declarations of love witnessed by hundreds. Nothing worked. The curse remained, and my hope began to crack. On the night before the year's deadline, Caden called me to his study during the day, something he rarely did. When I arrived, I found him standing by the window, staring out at the city below. They're expecting you to fail, he said without turning around. The council. They've already prepared the announcement. Tomorrow, when the curse hasn't broken, they'll declare our marriage invalid. Say it was performed under false pretenses. Can they do that? They can try. And with no heir, no proof that you're capable of breaking the curse, they might succeed. He finally turned to face me, and he looked exhausted. Mira, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. Okay. Are you happy? Here? With us? Even though we're still cursed? The question caught me off guard. Was I happy? I thought about it, really thought. I thought about my library, where I spent quiet mornings reading, about my afternoons with Caden, learning to be a queen I'd never wanted to be, about my nights with Ash, where we talked and laughed and held each other until dawn. I thought about how I'd gone from invisible to seen, from worthless to valued, from broken to chosen. Yes, I said softly. I'm happy. Even with everything else, the whispers, the politics, the curse, I'm happier than I've ever been. Then that's what matters. He crossed to me and took my hands. Tomorrow, regardless of what happens with the council, I want you to know something. You didn't fail. We didn't fail. We built something real. That's not failure. But the curse is just a curse. It doesn't define us. It doesn't diminish what we are to each other. He cupped my face gently. I love you, Mira. Ash loves you. And that love is the truest magic I've ever known. I pulled him close, burying my face in his chest. I love you too. Both of you. Always. We stood like that for a long time, holding each other against whatever tomorrow would bring. That night, I entered the circular chamber one last time before the deadline. Ash was already transformed, pacing restlessly. When he saw me, he stopped. This is it, he said quietly. Our last chance. I know. I'm sorry I couldn't give you the ending you deserved. The fairy tale where love conquers all. Ash, stop. I moved to him, taking his face in my hands. You gave me everything that matters. You saw me. You chose me. You loved me. That's the fairy tale. Even if we're still cursed? Even then. I kissed his muzzle gently. I don't need you to be human to love you. I just need you to be you. He made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. How did I get so lucky? We both got lucky. We found each other. We spent that last night the way we'd spent the first, talking, holding each other, building something that transcended magic and curses and the opinions of kingdoms. And when dawn came, when Caden emerged still cursed, still transforming every night, we faced it together. The council convened at noon. They were ready to declare the marriage invalid, to force Caden to choose their candidate. But Caden stood before them with me at his side and said 6 words that changed everything. I choose my wife. still cursed. The council erupted in protests. But Caden was the king. And a king's choice, once made before witnesses and gods, couldn't be easily unmade. We'd lost the battle to break the curse, but we'd won the right to stay together anyway. They exiled me. Not officially. The council couldn't openly banish the queen without cause, but they made it clear I wasn't welcome at court. So Caden gave me a small estate on the edge of the kingdom, far from the palace, far from the politics, far from the whispers. It's only for a little while, he promised on the day I left, until I can consolidate power, until I can find a way to protect you from them. I understand. I'll visit when I can, and you'll have the nights I'll arrange for the circular chamber to be recreated here. Ash will be with you every sunset to sunrise. What about you? I touched his face gently. Who will you have during the day? My memories of you. My knowledge that you're safe. That's enough. Thanks for watching. It had to be. The estate was beautiful, a small manor surrounded by gardens and forests. I had servants, books, everything I could want materially, everything except the people I loved. Caden visited once a month, when he could slip away from his duties. We'd spend precious hours together, making up for lost time. But it was never enough. It was never close to enough, and Ash was with me every night. But knowing he'd disappear at dawn, that Caden would wake alone in the palace, made every sunrise feel like a small death. This was my life now. This was the price of loving someone cursed. I told myself I was still happy, that having them part-time was better than not having them at all. I told myself this was enough. I told myself I didn't regret my choice. But late at night, alone in my beautiful prison, I sometimes wondered if the council had been right all along. Maybe some curses were meant to stay unbroken. Chapter 8. The Wedding of Lies. I'd been living in exile for 11 months when the letter arrived. It came by royal courier, a young beta who looked terrified to be delivering it. The seal was Caden's, but the handwriting inside was unfamiliar. Formal. Cold. To Her Majesty, Queen Mira Thornwell. You are cordially invited to attend the wedding of His Majesty, King Caden Aldrich, to Lady Alara Brightmore of House Silvermere. The ceremony will take place at the palace on the first day of summer. Your presence is requested but not required. By order of the Council of Lords. The words blurred. I read them again. Then again. They didn't change. Caden was getting married. To someone else. My hands shook as I set the letter down. This had to be a mistake. Some political maneuver by the council. Caden would never, we'd promised. But there it was. In writing. Official. Real. I made it to the bathroom before I vomited. Ash didn't know. That night, when he transformed and found me sitting by the window instead of greeting him, his confusion was immediate. Mira? What's wrong? I handed him the letter silently. Watched his expression shift from confusion to shock to rage. No, he crumpled the paper in his clawed fist. This isn't real. Caden would never. It has his seal. Then it's a forgery. The council trying to manipulate us. He paced frantically. I would know if he was planning to marry someone else. I would feel it. We're the same person. Are you? The question came out sharper than I intended. You keep saying that, but maybe you're more separate than you think. Maybe the Caden who rules during the day made choices the beast who loves me at night doesn't know about. Ash stopped pacing, looking stricken. You can't believe that. I don't know what to believe anymore. I pulled my knees to my chest. We've been apart for almost a year. You only see me at night, when you're transformed. What if the real Caden, the human one, decided I wasn't worth the political cost? That's not possible. I love you. He loves you. We're the same. Then where is he? The words burst out of me, raw and desperate. Where has he been for 11 months? One visit a month, Ash, one. And now this? Ash had no answer. His silence was damning. I stood abruptly. I need to know. I need to see him. Talk to him. Understand what's happening. How? The palace is 3 days' journey. The wedding is in a week. Then I'll leave tomorrow. I moved to my wardrobe, already planning. I'll go to the wedding. I'll confront him in front of everyone if I have to. Mira, that's dangerous. The council wants you gone. If you appear at the wedding, then they can try to stop me. I turned to face him, and I knew my expression was fierce. I'm still his wife, still the queen. No matter how much they want to forget it, I have every right to attend his wedding. Ash stared at me for a long moment. Then his expression shifted into something equally fierce. You're right, and I'm coming with you. You can't. You transform at sunset. Then we'll time it so I'm transformed when we arrive. Let the council see the beast they're so afraid of. Let them see what they're trying to destroy. It was reckless, dangerous, exactly the kind of dramatic gesture that could get us both killed. Okay, I said. Let's do it. The journey to the palace took 3 days, just as Ash predicted. We traveled at night, when he was transformed. He carried me on his back, moving through the forests at a speed no horse could match. During the day, when he was Caden, we rested in hidden clearings, never speaking about the wedding or what we'd do when we arrived. The silence between us was different now, heavier, filled with unspoken fears. On the 3rd night, as we approached the palace, Ash finally broke the silence. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever we learn, you need to know something. What? I will always choose you, even if the human side of me is weak enough to be manipulated by the council. Even if Caden has made choices I don't understand. The beast me, I choose you. Always. That's not enough if he doesn't feel the same. Then I'll find a way to make him remember. His voice was fierce. I'll tear through every wall he's built, every political compromise he's made, until he remembers what matters, until he remembers you. I tightened my arms around his neck. Promise me something. Anything. If he's really choosing someone else, if this wedding is real, promise me you'll let me go. Don't fight for something that's already lost. Mira, promise me, Ash. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I promise. But I don't believe it will come to that. I wish I shared his certainty. We arrived at the palace just after sunset on the day of the wedding. The grounds were transformed, hundreds of lanterns, illuminating the gardens, musicians playing soft melodies, nobles in their finest attire gathering for the ceremony. It was beautiful, romantic, everything a royal wedding should be, everything mine hadn't been. Ash carried me through the servants' entrance, avoiding the main gates, where we'd be stopped. We made our way through familiar corridors, heading toward the throne room, where the ceremony would take place. Are you ready for this? Ash asked quietly. No, but I'm doing it anyway. He squeezed my hand. That's my brave queen. We entered through a side door, emerging into the throne room just as the ceremony was beginning. The space was packed with nobles, hundreds of them, all turned toward the front where Caden stood on a raised platform. He was dressed in formal attire, his expression carefully neutral. Next to him stood a woman I didn't recognize. Lady Alara, presumably. She was beautiful in that perfect, untouchable way that noble OMEAGAs were. Golden hair, flawless skin, a scent that probably drove every alpha in the room mad. Everything I wasn't. My entrance caused a ripple of shocked whispers. Nobles turned, their eyes widening as they saw me. The exiled queen returned uninvited. And next to me, massive and undeniable, stood Ash. The beast at a royal wedding. Scandalous, dangerous, exactly the statement we intended to make. Caden's head snapped up. For a moment, our eyes met across the crowded room, and I saw nothing, no recognition, no love, just emptiness. My heart shattered. But before I could process what that meant, the doors behind us burst open. Armed men poured in, not palace guards, but mercenaries. 20 of them, maybe more. They wore no house colors, no identifying marks. An assassination attempt. Here, now. The room erupted in chaos. Nobles screamed and scattered. The mercenaries moved with brutal efficiency, heading straight for the platform. Straight for Caden. And without thinking, without hesitating, I ran. Ash was faster. He launched himself forward with a roar that shook the chandeliers. He reached Caden just as the first mercenary raised a crossbow. The bolt flew. Ash twisted, putting his massive body between the weapon and Caden. The bolt buried itself in Ash's shoulder. He roared in pain but didn't fall. Get him to safety. I screamed at the guards who were finally reacting, but more mercenaries were coming. One of them grabbed me, his blade pressing against my throat. "Call off the beast or she dies," he shouted. Caden's eyes, those storm-gray eyes, finally showed emotion. Fear, rage, desperation, and then he transformed. In the middle of the day, in front of hundreds of witnesses, Caden's body convulsed, bones cracking and reshaping even though the sun was still high in the sky. It should have been impossible. The curse only triggered at night. But somehow, through sheer force of will or desperation or love, he was changing. The nobles screamed. The mercenaries hesitated. And Caden, now beast, launched himself at the man holding me. He tore through them like paper. Brutal, efficient, terrifying. And in that moment, I understood. The curse had never been about the transformation. It had never been about finding someone who loved the beast without knowing he was the king. It had been about Caden learning to accept both parts of himself, to stop hiding, to stop pretending he could be just the controlled king or just the wild beast. He needed to be both, openly, honestly, in daylight. The mercenaries who weren't dead fled. The nobles were pressed against the walls, terrified and transfixed. And in the center of the throne room stood Caden, fully beast. In the middle of the day, his eyes locked on mine. "Mira," he growled. His voice was Ash's voice, but also Caden's. Integrated. Whole. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This was never real. The wedding, it was a trap. We knew the assassination attempt was coming. I needed you safe, away from the palace. I couldn't risk them targeting you too." Understanding crashed over me. "You were protecting me. By pushing me away. Yes. And it almost cost me everything." He moved toward me, still in beast form even as the sun streamed through the windows. "I should have trusted you. Should have told you the truth instead of letting you believe I'd abandoned you. Can you forgive me?" I looked at him, really looked. At the beast standing in daylight, unashamed and unafraid. At the king who'd finally stopped hiding. At the person I loved in all his complicated, contradictory wholeness. "Only if you can forgive me," I said. "For doubting. For not trusting that what we had was strong enough to survive separation. There's nothing to forgive." He reached out carefully, and I took his clawed hand. "You're here. You came back. You fought for us even when you thought I'd betrayed you. That's everything." I pulled him close, this massive, dangerous, beautiful creature, and kissed him. The nobles gasped. I didn't care. When we pulled apart, I saw something miraculous. Caden was beginning to change again. But not back to human. He was becoming something else. Something in between. The fur receded slightly. His face became more human, though traces of the beast remained. His claws shortened into something that could be hands or paws depending on how you looked at them. He was both. King and beast. Human and monster. Integrated. The curse shimmered around him like heat waves. And then, with a sound like breaking glass, it shattered. 7 years of magic. Dissolved in a moment. Caden stood before me fully human for the first time in years. No beast waiting to emerge at sunset. No curse hanging over his head. Just him. Whole. Free. "It worked," he breathed. "Gods, it actually worked." What did? I was still trying to process what I'd just witnessed. True love's exception. His smile was brilliant. The curse required the beast to be loved by someone who didn't know he was the king. But you loved both of us knowing we were the same. You saw past the divisions, past the curse's attempts to separate us, and loved the whole person. He cupped my face. That kind of love that sees and accepts everything, is stronger than any curse. Strong enough to integrate what was broken. Strong enough to make us whole. "So the curse is gone? Really gone? Really gone?" He laughed, a sound of pure joy I'd never heard from him before. "I can feel it. The beast isn't locked away waiting for night. He's part of me now, fully integrated. I'm both, Mira. Finally both." Around us, the throne room was silent. Every noble, every guard, every witness was staring at their king, seeing him truly for the first time. Lord Westmere stepped forward, his face pale. "Your Majesty, we didn't know about the assassination plot. We would never have. You separated me from my wife for a year. Caden's voice was calm but dangerous. You declared our marriage invalid. You tried to force me to choose your candidates. And you made her believe I'd abandoned her. We were following the original agreement. You had 1 year to break the curse. And I did, just not on your timeline. Caden turned to face the council directly, his arm around my waist. The curse is broken. I'm free. And my choice of mate stands. Mira is my wife, my queen. And if any of you have a problem with that, we can discuss it with my newly integrated beast half. The threat was clear. The council bowed their heads, accepting defeat. Lady Alara, the woman who was supposed to marry Caden, stepped forward. She was smiling. I'm glad, she said simply. I never wanted to marry you, Your Majesty. My father arranged it, but I could see you loved someone else. She looked at me. I hope you'll be happy together. Thank you, I said, meaning it. She nodded and disappeared into the crowd. The rest of the day passed in a blur. The assassination attempt was investigated. The mercenaries had been hired by a rival kingdom hoping to destabilize our throne. With Caden's curse broken, their plan had failed spectacularly. The council was not dissolved, but significantly reduced in power. Caden made it clear that the crown's authority superseded theirs. Several lords resigned, others fell in line. And me, I was reinstated as queen, not the exiled, unwanted queen, but the one who'd broken an unbreakable curse, the one who'd fought for her king when everyone else had given up. That night, Caden and I returned to the circular chamber one last time. We don't have to stay here anymore, he said, looking around the stone room that had held us for so many nights. We can sleep in the royal chambers. Together, without fear of transformation. I know. I moved to the center of the room, where we'd sat on that first night. But I wanted to come back. One more time. To remember. He joined me, sitting on the floor like we used to. What do you want to remember? How it felt. Being broken, and finding someone who saw beauty in that brokenness. How you asked my name when no one else cared to know it. How Ash chose his own name and became more than the curse. I leaned against him. How we built something real in the darkest place. Sire. We did, didn't we? His arm came around me. Built a love strong enough to break magic itself. Do you miss him? Ash? Caden was quiet, considering. He's not gone. He's just integrated. I can still feel him. His wildness, his honesty, his protective fury. But now it's all part of me instead of locked behind a curse. That's good. I loved both of you. I wouldn't want to lose half. You haven't. You never will. He turned me to face him. Mira Thornwell, will you marry me? Again. Properly this time, with celebration and joy, and the whole kingdom witnessing. I pretended to consider it. Will there be cake? Mountains of it? Then yes. Absolutely yes. He kissed me then, deep and thorough, and full of promise. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. I have something for you, he said suddenly. I've been waiting for the right moment. He pulled a small book from his jacket pocket. I recognized it immediately. It was the journal where I'd written my accounts of every night with Ash. I kept them all, Caden said softly. Every word you wrote, every conversation we had, they saved me during the year we were apart, reminded me what we were fighting for. I took the journal, flipping through pages filled with my own handwriting, memories of transformation and truth, and slowly falling in love. Thank you, I whispered. For keeping them, for keeping us. Always. 3 months later, we held our second wedding. This time, the kingdom celebrated. There were festivals in the streets, gifts from every noble house, and more cake than we could possibly eat. Lydia came. She was married now to a kind beta merchant who loved her desperately. We embraced for the first time in over a year. I'm proud of you, she whispered. You found something real. Something worth fighting for. So did you, I said, looking at her husband. We both got our happy endings. Eventually, she smiled. Though yours is significantly more dramatic than mine. What can I say? I like a good story. My parents didn't come. I hadn't expected them to. but their absence didn't hurt the way it once would have. I had a new family now. A chosen one. As Caden and I stood before the kingdom, exchanging vows for the second time, I thought about how far we'd come. From a broken Omega and a cursed king to this two-whole people, choosing each other freely and openly. The priest pronounced us married again. Caden kissed me, thoroughly, and the kingdom cheered for their king and queen. But the best moment came later. During the reception, a foreign diplomat approached us, smiling warmly. "Your Majesties, I have a gift. A riddle, if you will. It's a tradition in my country to test the wisdom of newlyweds." Caden and I exchanged glances. We both knew this riddle. "Please," I said. "We'd be honored to hear it." The diplomat cleared his throat. "It protects without chains, holds without hands, and breaks only when given away freely." "What is it?" Caden answered without hesitation, his hand finding mine. "A promise." "Correct," the diplomat beamed. "And what promise have you made to each other?" I looked at Caden, at the king, who'd seen my brokenness and called it beautiful, at the beast who'd chosen his own name and identity, at the man who was now fully, completely himself. "To see each other truly," I said. "All the broken parts and beautiful pieces. And to stay. Always." "That," the diplomat said, "is the answer to every curse that's ever existed." Epilogue. The next story. Months after the wedding, I was in my library when Caden found me. "I have news," he said, looking troubled. "A letter from the neighboring kingdom. They have a situation that sounds familiar." "How familiar?" "A princess cursed to exist in 3 different forms. No one knows which one is real. Each form appears at different times, with different memories." He handed me the letter. "They're asking if we know anything about breaking impossible curses." I read the letter, a smile tugging at my lips. 3 forms. 3 versions of herself, none of them quite whole. "It reminds me of us." "It does, doesn't it?" I set the letter down. "Should we help them? Do you want to?" I thought about our journey, about the pain and the triumph and the love that broke an unbreakable curse. Yes, everyone deserves the chance to become whole, to find someone who sees all their fractured pieces and loves them anyway. "Then we'll help." Caden pulled me close. "But first, we have our own happy ending to enjoy." "First," I agreed, kissing him, "and then we help others find theirs." Outside the library window, the sun was setting. But for the first time in 7 years, no transformation was coming. Just another peaceful night with the person I loved. We'd earned this. The quiet moments, the simple joy, the freedom to just exist without curses hanging over our heads. But somewhere in another kingdom, someone else was trapped in an impossible situation, someone who needed hope. And hope, I'd learned, was the most powerful magic of all. And that's Mira and Caden's story, from invisible servant and cursed king to integrated, whole partners who proved that love isn't about fixing each other, it's about seeing each other truly. If this story moved you, if you connected with themes of finding worth in brokenness and love that defies impossible odds, I have something you need to read. My book, Rejected by the Alpha, is a glow-up revenge romance that takes these same themes and amplifies them. It's about an Omega who gets rejected and transforms herself into everything they said she could never be. The emotional depth, the tension, the satisfying triumph, it's all there. Link is in the description, and seriously, if you grab it, come back and tell me what you think in the comments. Your support helps me create more stories like this. Thank you so much for watching this journey with me. If you loved it, smash that like button, subscribe for more emotional fantasy romance stories, and I'll see you in the next one.